Hey, guess where I am? Yes, I am back in Montreal, a city I love riding bikes in. But this time I started thinking a little bit more deeply about what keeps drawing me back here. And so today's video is exploring all the reasons why it feels so different riding a bike in Montreal than it does in so many other cities.
All of which may help your city as well.
Okay, well, we can cross weather off the list of reasons because the weather is not cooperating. I came to Montreal to take part in Go Velo, the big weekend-long bike festival, which I just love. This would be my third time attending it. The first event of the festival is the night ride, the big Tour la Nuit. But things did not get off to a good start. First the rain came, and then the thunder, and then they ended up having to cancel. But I was here with my friends, Connor, Will, and Jake from Priority Bicycles, and we did not let a little rain stop us. We kind of headed out on our own night ride.
And this is what got me. There were thousands of people standing at the starting point in the pouring rain when that cancellation came through. Families, kids, people who clearly had been planning this for weeks.
Also, I got to mention that this was Game 7 of the NHL playoffs, and the Montreal Canadiens were in it. And if you know Montreal, this is definitely a hockey town.
So I started thinking that maybe this is the answer right here. Maybe there is a culture of cycling here that runs deeper than anywhere else in North America. Maybe that's why I feel different when I ride here. I'm surrounded by people who genuinely love this, and it changes something about the experience of riding here. And it's a compelling theory. And honestly, standing there in the rain, watching families refuse to go home, it kind of felt like the answer. But when you start picking at it, maybe that's not all it. I mean, Portland has cycling culture. Minneapolis has cycling culture. Even Calgary, where I live, has a core group of passionate people who love riding every day. And yet riding in those places doesn't feel the same as it does here. So if culture alone was the answer, I feel it should be there anywhere cyclists gather in numbers, and yet somehow it feels different here. Which means culture might be real, and it clearly is, but it's probably pointing at something else, something underneath it. So let's keep looking.
Okay, the next day the skies cleared, which set the table nicely for the next event. The guys at Priority helped me organize our own kind of urban cycling event, kind of a side event to the main festival for the shifter community. We organized a group ride, and as we rode along, I asked a few people why they think that Montreal feels a little bit different when you're riding a bike.
What I love about Montreal cycling is it has amazing cycling infrastructure compared to where we live, Toronto. There's definitely a different culture. There's more acceptance of bikes on the street, where once again in Toronto it's pretty much a war every day. It's like Mad Max when you get out there. So yeah, we come every year and we love exploring new areas, and yeah, it's just a joy. It's just lovely to get around.
And I heard this really compelling story from a young woman who grew up in Tallahassee, Florida as a child of bike-loving former Montrealer parents, and she's back in the city now, and she really put into perspective what makes a bike-friendly city different.
When I was younger, I used to kind of be embarrassed of biking. I always wanted my parents, like when we were going somewhere, I would want them to park down the street and then walk so that people might think that we had gotten there by car instead of by bike. But I don't know, when I grew up and I went to college and I got more perspective about things, I really appreciate my parents for that. And it's just, life is better when you're biking, especially here. I think they kind of feed into each other. The infrastructure allows and encourages more cycling, and then that creates more of a culture.
So beneath the idea of culture, the idea of infrastructure and safe bike lanes kept coming up, and it's so obvious to see this in Montreal.
Riding in bike lanes like this just feel totally different than riding next to cars. I mean, the tension just evaporates. When you're in with cars, you're just always on high alert. It feels different. When you're here, I feel it in my gut. It's visceral. When I'm on a safe bike lane, it just feels better.
So theory number 2, infrastructure. The bike lanes here are better, and better bike lanes just feel better to ride on. I mean, that sounds obvious, but there's something more here. I don't think the presence of bike lanes alone is enough. I mean, lots of cities have been building bike lanes in North America here for 20 years now. So if it was simply about having bike lanes, you should get this feeling everywhere. And clearly we don't. I mean, infrastructure is a big part of it, maybe the most important part of this equation, but there's something specific about how it works here that I'm not quite capturing yet. Something about what the infrastructure does, maybe not just what it is. And so I need to keep looking. After the ride, we headed to a microbrewery called Cibois, who were kind enough to host us. And I was lucky enough to have some friends join as well, Patrick and Jasmine from the great YouTube channel Oh the Urbanity. the amazing but criminally underappreciated YouTuber Paige Saunders, and look over there, it's Kara from the podcast The Missing Middle.
You should go subscribe to their channels right now if you haven't already. Well, not now. Watch this video and then go subscribe to their channels.
And I want to say a big thank you here to Shifter members, because we played this made-up game called Shifter Urban Cycling Family Feud. And when I said survey says, that was real survey data from Shifter members. So thanks to all of you who participated in that survey. We talked bikes and cities and transit and all kinds of things, and it was genuinely one of my favorite moments of the whole trip. And of course, a huge thanks to Priority for supporting this, hanging out with us, and giving away some bikes to some lucky prize winners. And sitting there surrounded by cyclists from Montreal and beyond, started forming a new idea in my head, because this felt like more than just a fun afternoon.
So theory number 3 is community. This event felt so good and there were so many positive vibes. It made me think that, oh, this is such a great community of cycling in Montreal. And once that idea popped in my head, I started seeing signs of it everywhere. I mean, there are so many cycling events and groups in this city. There is public art that's dedicated to cycling. Even the graffiti sometimes seems supportive of cycling. I'd say even the public bike share system known as Advocacy, which is thriving here more than it does in most places. And there's almost a sense of pride in it here, because Advocacy is where bike sharing started in the modern era. It was here and then it spread, so there really is a sense of pride. All this does seem to bring people together and create a sense of community around cycling.
Then again, you think a bit deeper, and the theory feels to me like it came up a bit short. Tight cycling communities exist everywhere. Sometimes the most marginalized cycling communities have the tightest communities. That's what actually brings people together. Here, it felt a little bit different, to me at least. So yes, the community is brought together by advocacy, but maybe here it feels like it's evolved to the next level, to the point where it's tied into like civic identity, civic life, maybe even celebration. So community is definitely part of cycling in Montreal, but it still isn't feeling totally satisfying as an answer to me. But we're not done with the Go Velo Festival yet. The next day was the Tour de l'Île, the tour around the island of Montreal. Look at this, party pace, maybe even sub-party pace. Tens of thousands of people of every age and ability. Roadies in Lycra, tandems, kids in cargo bikes, people on Bixies. This is what cycling looks like when a city makes room for it. But something else caught my attention before the ride even started. This event is organized by Enviolo Quebec, one of the more effective cycling advocacy organizations in North America. They've been pushing for cycling infrastructure in this province for decades, and they've been a big part of building what I would say is the best cycling network on the continent.
But decisions about transportation are political decisions, and as strong as an advocacy group is, it's still subject to the whims of politics.
And this was brought to bear in a recent election. A new mayor was voted in who has been, to put it diplomatically, less enthusiastic about cycling than her predecessors. So when I saw who was on the microphone at the start of this event, yep, that's the new mayor, I stopped for a minute to think about what this actually means. Because this isn't a mayor who campaigned on cycling. This is a mayor whose election made a lot of cyclists nervous. And yet here she is, publicly kicking off one of the biggest cycling events in North America. Which leads to theory number 4, advocacy. When I say advocacy, I don't just mean people holding signs and writing letters, although that matters too. I mean advocacy that has accumulated enough force over the years that cycling is part of the civic mainstream. It's part of the civic debate, something politicians have to reckon with whether they want to or not. In most cities, cycling advocates are still fighting for survival and for bike lanes that won't get ripped out. But something different is here. The advocates aren't just fighting for space anymore. They've created enough cycling, enough infrastructure, enough political weight that even a skeptical mayor feels the need to show up at an event like this. But this is a double-edged theory, because I think by the same argument, you could say that Montreal should have maybe moved beyond the political whims of a specific mayor. And so I'm now back to that question I posed at the beginning of this video, is what makes this city a little bit different?
So just to recap, here are my 4 working theories about why it feels different to ride a bike here. 1 is culture, 2 is infrastructure, 3 is community, and 4 is advocacy. And I think all of these are elements. They're each ingredients in the recipe that makes all of this things up, and they actually feed off of each other. They help build upon each other, and you can't pull one out and have the same results. But there's a bigger idea, I think, that runs through all of these that I've been thinking more and more about. And that idea comes down to one word, and that word is trust. Trust runs through all of these things. A culture of cycling is built on the trust that there are others out there who are like you and believe in things and will be there for you and support you when you need it. The infrastructure here is increasingly trustworthy. Community is absolutely built on trust. And of course, great advocacy is something that you can trust that will represent you, that will look long-term, that will fight for things in your interest. And so all these things are really built on trust. Like, I know things aren't perfect here. I don't want this to be a love letter to Montreal, even though it kind of is. Once you get out of the urban core, out in the suburbs, and even just a few neighborhoods away from this great area, things get car-centric pretty fast, and they look a lot like the rest of North America, and with a lot of the problems that come with that. But that's not the point here. I wasn't trying to judge anything. The point here was just to identify why I feel different when I'm riding here. This isn't the only place that has it, and I see flashes of it in all kinds of other places, but here maybe it's just a little bit more ingrained and maybe a little bit more sustained. So I think that's it. That strange feeling I have when I'm here riding a bike, that feeling is trust. Thanks for watching. This is Shifter, a channel about urban cycling and bike commuting. Please consider subscribing, becoming a member, or checking out my course on how to become a better bike commuter. This is great for someone who's new in your life and thinking about bike commuting. It takes them through all the basics. Plus, I've got a new lower priced starter pack, and I just added a bunch of new content on e-bikes and cargo bikes. See you next time.